Hey guys, welcome back. I'm sorry it was so long between my last video, like before I put it up. I moved and a bunch of stuff was happening. So I am doing this video now and I hope you guys enjoy it. It is kind of different than my last videos. I've kind of branched out over the past couple videos, but this one is extremely interesting and really weird, and I hope you guys find it as interesting as I do. So let's get started. So this video is about the disappearance of Lisanne Froons and Kris Kremer. In March of 2014, two Dutch women, one Lisanne Froons, and she was 22 years old, and Kris Kremer, who's 21 years old, traveled to Panama. And this trip was kind of a graduation present. One of the girls had just graduated, so they'd been saving up all their money to go on this trip together. And the first 2 weeks they were going to stay with, or they were going to travel around Panama. And the second 2 weeks were spent with a host family. So they were staying in a house with the family and for the last 4 weeks, and they were learning Spanish and stuff. So they had been saving up to go on this trip together. So on the morning of April 1st, 2014, the two girls decided to go on a hike. And this is kind of weird. It was on a hike on the trails around Boquete near the Baru volcano, and they took the family's dog, who's named Blue. So this was kind of strange because the two girls had actually hired someone the next day to take them and guide them on the trails. Because the trails, as you'll see later, are kind of like they're easy to follow, but if you get off the trail even just for a second, it's very hard to find it again. So most people hire someone to take them around, and they did. But the day before, they decided to go and do it by themselves, which is kind of weird. Like, why would you hire someone? I don't know. The family's dog returned home that night, but when the family noticed it was unaccompanied by the two girls, they got really worried. And the family that they were staying with called the mother of Lisanne Froons and asked if she had heard from her or if she knew what the girls were doing. And the mother hadn't heard from her daughter. So the mother tried to contact Lizanne and Kris, but neither of them answered their phones, and she wasn't able to make contact with them. So the host family called the police and said that the two girls were lost. And the police came to the family's home and saw that all of their stuff was there. So it was obvious that the girls hadn't planned to be gone for very long. And the police were called, and an extensive search was handled by police, by helicopters, by police dogs, by the indigenous people, everybody. It was on for 10 days. 10 days they searched, and they didn't come up with anything. After 10 weeks, an indigenous woman turned in a blue backpack that she claimed to have found while tending her rice paddies, and she said that it definitely was not there the day before. So the police got the backpack, and it was immaculate. Like, it had rained the night before, and the backpack was not wet. Everything inside of it was packed very well, and it was in really great shape, which is strange because it's the middle of the rainforest, and this backpack has no damage to it. It's not wet, anything. It was very strange. So inside the backpack were 2 pairs of sunglasses, $83 in cash, Lisanne Froons' passport, a water bottle, one water bottle, Froons' Canon PowerShot camera, 2 bras, and Froons' Samsung Galaxy phone, as well as Kris Kremer's iPhone 4. So this is where it gets really weird, so hold on tight. So, the data from the girls' cell phones was turned into police, and it confirmed the police's worst fears. Several attempts were made to get in contact with the police within hours of the girls starting their hike. Like that same day, the girls were trying to make contact with the police. So, now we'll get into who they tried to call and how many times they tried to call it, etc. So on April 1st, one call was made from Kramer's iPhone 4 at 4:39 p.m. and one from Froons' Samsung Galaxy at 4:51 p.m. So that was only a few hours after they even started the hike. So it's obvious that they knew they were lost or they knew they were in trouble within just a few hours of starting their hike. And none of the calls that they tried ever went through except for one, and it went through for just a little over a second, so not enough time for them to get help. And that was due to lack of reception. And also, the two girls, they were from the Netherlands, and they were trying to call 112, which is the emergency services number in Europe. But in Panama, the number is 911. So several of their calls, they weren't even dialing the right number. So you can see that they realized they were dialing the wrong number after, I believe, just 2 days. So, the 911 call that actually went through, that was on April 3rd. That went for just a little bit over a second. So after April 5th, so they went missing, or they got lost or whatever on April 1st. So this is April 5th. So this is 4 days later. Froons' phone died at 5 a.m. So Kramer's phone was turned on and off several times the same day, probably to search for reception. Someone probably turned it on, saw that there was no reception, and turned it off. And they did this several times that day. So on April 6th, Kramer's phone was turned on and off again and kept entering the wrong PIN. And it was, they couldn't unlock it. But I was wondering, and please put in the comments if I was wrong, because I can't remember on an iPhone 4, but I know on iPhones now, you can, like if you enter the wrong PIN, it has an option to call an emergency number. See, okay, so it says Touch ID or passcode, and then right here it says emergency. So, and you can call, an emergency number, an emergency call. So I can't remember if on an iPhone 4 they had that, but if someone was trying to put in an incorrect PIN and couldn't get it, why didn't they just use the emergency number? But, okay, so maybe this answers our question. So, I saw in some reports that between, I believe, April 8th and April 11th, there were 77 call attempts to emergency services. So maybe that was when they were trying to put in the incorrect PIN for some reason and was doing the emergency call button. I don't know. But some reports mentioned the 77 calls and then other reports didn't. So, I'm just going to say maybe they did do the emergency call button. I don't know. Okay, so despite the phone being turned on and off again, Kramer's iPhone 4, they were never able to use the correct PIN. So it was pretty obvious to me, at least, that the person getting into the iPhone 4 was not Kramer, because you would, even if you get it wrong a couple times, you kind of forget or whatever, you would eventually get it right because it's your phone, you know what I'm saying? So, anyways, so here's another really bizarre thing about this case. So also in the backpack was Froons' Canon PowerShot camera, and about 100 photos were on the memory card. And the first about a dozen or so were normal, showed the girls they were having fun on their hike, just hiking through the woods together, enjoying themselves, smiling. You can see the view that they were looking at, sunny outside. Okay, and then the last 90 photos were all taken on April 8th between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. So it's kind of weird that they were all taken between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., which that's 90 pictures. And they were all taken about 2 minutes apart. Some were even taken like about 15 seconds apart, which is the time that the camera needed to reboot and take another photo. So these photos were mostly of the jungle around them, and so most of them like are indistinguishable. Like someone was turning really quickly and taking a photo, like everything's blurry. And there, I think, are only about 5 where you can even see what the person is taking a photo of. So there are many theories because 90 photos is a lot. So obviously the person was trying to, this was important to them, or they wouldn't take 90 photos. So there are many theories about like what these photos mean. So one of those is that they were trying to light their path, like that they didn't have a flashlight or whatever and were trying to get somewhere, and like they were taking a photo of what they saw. So like it was lighting the path so they could see in front of them. But you know when you're taking a photo and it's kind of dark outside and you're looking at the flash and then you can't see afterwards, like your vision, like your eyes have to readjust. So people are saying, well, why would they light the way? Because they wouldn't be able to see afterwards because the flash is just so bright. So, okay, the second one is that they were trying to scare away like an animal or something like out in the jungle, that they were using the flash to scare something away. So that's like, makes sense. And then the third one is that they were using the flash to like alert any searchers or the helicopters that were flying above or something to show them where they were. But these photos were taken between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. So if I was the police, I wouldn't search at night. Like if I was searching for someone, I wouldn't be searching at 1 a.m. when you can't see anything. You're in the jungle. I would be searching during the day when you can see, if you're in a helicopter, see below. It doesn't make sense that they would be searching at 1 a.m., you know? And then the fourth theory is that they were doing, like, that the photos had a sequence to them. So, I read one thing where, the sequence of the photos was 2 were taken, far away, and then, 2 were taken really up close, and then 2 were taken above, and then 2 were taken below. So then they would do that sequence again. They would walk a few meters and then do that same sequence again to, signal to the person who found their camera or whatever where they were. But the problem with that was that so many of them were indistinguishable. So if you're trying to make a sequence and help someone find you, you would hold the camera steady, you would be holding it in such a way that they could see what you're taking a photo of. So many of them were not clear photos. They were super blurry. So, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense, I guess, that they would try and signal where they were, but I don't know. It's kind of, I don't understand why so many of them were blurry in that case. Okay. So only one of the photos had Kris Kremer in the photos. And I read some reports saying that in this photo you can see an injury to her head. I couldn't find the photo or find any solid evidence that this was true, but many reports say that in the photo you can see an injury to Kris's head. So this kind of comes up later, but so after the backpack was found, the searchers decided to search near where the backpack was, which makes sense. So they were able to find Kris's shorts, and I'll put a map up so you can see where all I'm talking about. But her shorts were folded and zipped up and were neatly placed on a rock. So it was obvious that she had taken off her shorts, zipped them up, folded them, and was maybe going to come back and get them later. I don't know why they would be like that, but the searchers were also able to find a boot with a foot in it, and then also a pelvic bone. So they were able to find the foot was confirmed to be Lizanne's foot, and then the pelvis was confirmed to be Kris's foot. So, as horrible as it was that they found these, the police were able to confirm that the girls were most likely deceased, and so they continued their search to find more remains. So 33 more bones were found along the riverbank across a long distance, and the bones were both Lizanne's and Kris's bones. But of the 33 bones, 28 of those bones were from Lizanne's left foot. And although Lizanne's bones still had flesh attached, Kris's were bleached. And this is really weird, y'all. I can't decide what I think about this. So the bleaching is really weird. This really can't be explained from the elements because Lizanne's bones were not bleached and they still even had flesh attached. But it isn't the amount of time that she was out there either, because in a similar case, a American tourist had gotten lost in the jungle and his entire skeletal remain were found after 2 years and they weren't bleached. None of the bones were bleached. So it's not that. And then also, it can't be said that it was the soil that they were on, that the bones were on, because the bones were bleached from phosphorus or lime. And phosphorus could not be found in the local soil near where the bones were found, anywhere. So the only thing that I could find that sounded plausible was the fact that many Mexican drug cartels use lime to decompose bodies faster, so that the physical evidence of any crimes could not be found. They would get rid of it using the lime. But why would a Mexican drug cartel want these Dutch tourists? And why are they in Panama? It's just that doesn't really make sense either. What? They weren't connected to the Mexican drug cartels. They're in Panama. They really don't even speak English, Spanish that well. So I don't know. That doesn't really make sense either. And also, why were only Kris's bones bleached and not Lizanne's? So if they did come into an attacker and the attacker was using lime to decompose the body faster, the attack only happened to Kris, or was Lizanne in on? I don't understand why only Kris's bones were bleached and not Lizanne's if they were found together. Many of their bones were found together. So that is also, so it's kind of weird that this is happening. So these bones were all found by the indigenous who live in Panama. So the special prosecutor deputized the indigenous so that they were able to be a part of the search, because the weather was so bad in that area during this time that the police didn't feel comfortable with searching. And so that just shows how intense the elements were in this area. And the bones were legitimately found in the middle of nowhere. They weren't just found on the side of the road where these girls would be, or on a trail or anything. They were found in the middle of nowhere, in a whole day's trip from where they started. And that's not a leisurely hike up a mountain. This is trudging through mud, having to machete down some vines, not even it was on a, they were they went along a path, like I'll get to that later, but the Indigenous didn't even feel comfortable going on these paths, and they know them well. And these girls, how did they get there? A whole day's trip from where they started, like completely off the path, like going through mud. It's raining. You can see in the photos that it's raining. And y'all, they only had 1 bottle of water and no food. And if they are the ones who were trying to get on the phone, that's 10 days. And they had 1 bottle of water between both of them. And no food. They're not like pitching up a tent for 10 days. They have nothing. They don't even have layers to change into. They had nothing. That's crazy. Like, I have no idea how you would make it that long. Like, I went on a hike this summer and I thought I was going to die after 10 minutes. Like, these girls are making it 10 days without water. That's crazy. Okay. Anyways, so the average human has 206 bones. And the police and Indigenous were only able to find 28 of Lizanne's bones. So where are they? Where are the rest of their bones? Like, that's a lot that they're not able to find. So, and also the amount of decomposition on Kris and the bleaching can't be due to animal scavenging, because there were no signs of animal like marks on any of the bones. So, which in and of itself is kind of odd, because they were found in the rainforest. Like, there are a lot of animals walking around, and there were no signs of animal scavenging. So that's kind of weird too. So, okay. So now we can start talking about the trail that they were going on. So they started over by this like volcano, and they like went up the volcano, and you can see the pictures, and then they started going down the volcano, and you can see the pictures of that too. And then you get to, on this trail, you get to this point where if you go one way, it's fine, and that's like the way you're supposed to go. And then the other way is the Indigenous trail. That's like kind of a secret, and that I was talking about earlier, that the Indigenous only go on if like absolutely necessary and if the weather's okay, because it's so muddy and it's so easy to get lost on them. And so I'll put up a picture, but now there's a marker saying don't go this way, but before there wasn't a marker saying don't go this way. So maybe if they didn't read the map correctly or something, they went the wrong way and they started going that way. So if you start going that way, you'll get to this point called the Monkey Bridge, and it's over this stream during the season that they were there, and it's 3 ropes. So there's 2 ropes that you hold on to, and then 1 rope that you walk on, like you put your feet on and you walk across it and you hold on and like kind of go like that. And many experts think maybe this is where Kris got her injury. Like maybe she fell in or something and hit her head on something, and like that's how she got her injury. And this kind of makes sense, because if in one of the photos you can see that the girls got like a branch and put on these orange, I don't know if maybe they were like wrappers of some variety, because I know there were like gum wrappers around, and maybe they used like a candy wrapper or something, like something that they had, and you could see it in a photo. And so during the search, the searchers actually found the little like emergency marker that they like had made, and it was right by the Monkey Bridge, and they took a photo of it. So maybe the girls like were there. Like you would want to take a picture of where your friend fell in the water. So that makes sense that maybe Kris fell in there. But and also, so I believe that Kris passed away first, and here's why. So remember the phone records that I was talking about? So after a certain day, Kris's phone is not able to be unlocked again. But both of the phones were found in the backpack. So like Kris's phone, you would know the passcode of your own phone. But maybe if Kris passed away and Lizanne's phone died, she was looking for another way to get in contact with emergency personnel, but couldn't remember Kris's phone password. And that kind of makes sense because in that photo, Kris possibly has an injury, and Kris's shorts are the one that was found, and Kris's pelvic bone is the one that's found. So maybe Kris felt like got hurt and passed away, and Lizanne continued on and was the one taking the photos, but kept everything in her backpack. So that's kind of what I believe, is that they got lost, and Kris passed away, but Lizanne needed a phone and was trying to use her phone, couldn't get it to work, and Lizanne finally passed away after 10 days. I think that's probably what happened, that they died due to exposure. They didn't have enough water, didn't have enough food, could never find anyone to get help. Their phones weren't going through. But the things that are still weird are, why were the photos taken? What did they mean? How did they get so far off the trail? And how did they survive for 10 days? And also, like, what's up with the bone bleaching? That's really odd too. So I'd love to hear your comments on this case, what you think happened. Maybe there was an attacker. I'd love to hear your comments about this video and this case. It's very, very strange, and there's so much like complexities about it. So please comment down below anything that you'd like to comment, and like this video if you'd enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And thanks for watching, guys.